I, Kobe Bryant, have decided to take my talent to I have decided to skip college and take my talent to the NBA.
The first chapter of a story is often its most important. Our first page begins at Lower Merion High School outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where a 17-year-old Kobe Bryant has gradually become one of the biggest names in amateur basketball and has just announced his decision to forego college and submit his name for the 1996 NBA draft. After witnessing fellow top prospect Kevin Garnett be selected in the top 5 of the previous draft, Kobe knew that he was capable of making the jump to the pros and was now joining a stacked rookie class. While he had been a well-documented player in the media, with publications from national magazines to ESPN covering his rise in popularity, NBA franchises were still skeptical, especially considering there had never been a guard drafted straight out of high school. However, Bryant knew he only needed to impress one franchise to give him the opportunity he needed, and after impressive workouts for both the Celtics and Clippers, put on a performance in front of Lakers legend and general manager Jerry West that would change his life forever.
Then when he was in Los Angeles, his agent wanted us to work him out, which we did with some other kids, and he was by far, it was like no one else was in the gym, and these people were taken in the first round. We had Michael Cooper to work out against him, and Michael Cooper was a tremendous defensive player. And it got to the point where it was almost embarrassing to watch this 17-year-old kick this old man's fanny, I called Michael at that time. And I just said, hey, we don't need to see this anymore. This is ridiculous. I mean, this guy he's the best player in the draft.
As the 1996 draft rolled around, a draft that is considered by many to be one of the most talented in NBA history, Kobe would watch 12 players be selected before he finally heard his name called. But not for lack of interest. In fact, then Nets head coach John Calipari had been obsessed with Bryant since witnessing his workout for New Jersey. But Kobe's agent, who had had his sights set on the career opportunities that came with being in Los Angeles, threatened that his client would play overseas in Italy if the Nets even thought about selecting the 17-year-old with the 8th pick. The strategy worked, as 5 slots later, Bryant would get the call that every young hooper dreams of.
With the 13th pick in the 1996 NBA Draft, the Charlotte Hornets select Kobe Bryant from Lower Merion High School in Pennsylvania.
You had the scores to go to college. Why the NBA?
It's the ultimate challenge. You know, if I was 40 years old and I'm sitting back and I'm looking back at my career, if I went to college and played on the NBA, maybe I had a great career, maybe not, and I'm still having that doubt in my mind, could I have answered that challenge? Could I have responded to the challenge of the NBA? And that's something that I didn't want to have on my shoulders, so I just really accepted it.
Shortly after being selected, it was announced that Bryant's draft rights had been sent to the Los Angeles Lakers in return for veteran big man Vlade Divac. Not only would this move land Kobe with a franchise that believed in his potential, but it also freed up the cap space needed for LA to eventually lure the game's most dominant big man, Shaquille O'Neal, to the West Coast later that summer. In one offseason, the Lakers had brought in the pieces to re-establish themselves in the Western Conference and planted seeds that would eventually make them the NBA's ultimate powerhouse. In the meantime, a young Kobe Bryant was now one of the most recognizable faces on the Lakers roster, and his journey as a rookie would be anything but easy.
You know, I've learned how to play the NBA style of play, you know, the physicalness, the mental toughness that you need to get in there and get the job done. And the season in the NBA, you know, I understand it's going to be a roller coaster season for myself, but I'm willing to get in there and learn from these guys.
Despite showing some promise in the Summer League prior to the season, it wouldn't be until November 3rd, 1996 that Kobe Bryant would make his professional debut, becoming the second youngest player to ever play in an NBA game. After not playing in the season opener via coach's decision, the rookie would log only 6 minutes and 22 seconds in his first game, failing to score a single point and looking lost at times courtesy of the pace of the NBA. This would be a common theme throughout the first half of Kobe's rookie season. In fact, it would take him 2 months to finally score over 20 points in a professional game. Behind emerging all-stars Eddie Jones and Nick Van Exel, Kobe found himself fighting for minutes off the bench in a crowded Lakers backcourt. After convincing Shaq to come to the City of Angels, the franchise was focused on winning now, with a solid group of young players that had been on the cusp of a deep playoff run the past 2 seasons. With O'Neal coming in as the centerpiece, Kobe found himself being seen by the coaching staff as a valuable asset that would need to take this season to watch and learn. This meant that any opportunities Bryant got on the floor were valuable in showing what he was capable of. His minutes were inconsistent, but even in these lowest points of his young career, Kobe was still able to foreshadow the skill set that would eventually become the face of the franchise for the next 2 decades. Whether it be the impressive footwork that rivaled a seasoned vet, or his ability to somehow slither his 6'6" frame into the lane to convert a difficult shot, a young Bryant found himself dazzling fans and sometimes even teammates, giving a glimpse of the game that would eventually be crafted into one of basketball's most legendary skill sets.
But this kid right here, mark my words, and I said this earlier in the season, going to be unbelievable. I mean, and I'm not saying that because you hear it. I see him every day in practice.
I'm slime him a couple $100.
I see him every day in practice. I see how this kid works. I see how he, after practice, how he's still in the gym before practice. I know he goes to Pacific Palisades and shoots in their gym after school. He is just a tremendous talent.
After impressing in a couple late January performances, Coach Del Harris started giving Kobe more opportunities in the rotation, leading to a 9-game stretch prior to the All-Star break that saw him play over 22 minutes a night and average 11.8 points, including a highly anticipated matchup with Michael Jordan, who Kobe had been undoubtedly molding his game after. But it was the All-Star break itself, not this newfound production, that would firmly place Kobe in the league's spotlight. Despite not quite being ready for the weekend's biggest showcase, Kobe would leave his mark on the event nonetheless, starting with the newly formatted Rookie Challenge. In his first chance to show the world exactly what he was capable of, Bryant took full advantage, bringing the Cleveland crowd to their feet with a 31-point performance that was filled with high-flying dunks and big shots against the rest of basketball's top young stars. However, possibly the most memorable moment came from the dunk contest.
Oh, that was big. Went down between his legs and got the reverse. Between the legs, Kobe Bryant.
Look at him, check him out.
Kobe Bryant, 18-year-old rookie.
Following the break, Bryant's time on the floor and production with the Lakers continued to fluctuate. There were some games he would play a solid chunk of minutes and others that he didn't see the floor at all. Regardless, he managed to earn some trust from the coaching staff by the end of the regular season, being named to the NBA's all-rookie second team and helping play a small part in the Lakers winning 56 games that season, earning them the 4th seed in the top-heavy West. Coach Del Harris would tighten up the rotation come playoff time, meaning once again Kobe would have to fight his way back onto the floor for significant minutes. He would make his playoff debut in the closing seconds of Game 1 of their first round matchup against the Trailblazers, checking in with only 46 seconds left in the blowout win. He would get his first real postseason opportunity in Game 3, where he'd scored 22 points in 26 minutes on the floor in what would be the Lakers' only loss of the series. As Los Angeles moved into the second round, they found themselves matched up with the Utah Jazz, who had become the top team in the West. The legendary duo of John Stockton and Karl Malone had been running pick and roll since Kobe had been a first grader in Italy, and the Lakers found themselves falling behind 0-2 in the series, unable to match the experience of the vets. As Game 3 tipped off in Los Angeles, it was obvious the Lakers needed a spark offensively, with Eddie Jones being held scoreless through the first 28 minutes. In a move that would change the landscape of the game, Coach Harris turned to Kobe off the bench, giving him some key minutes in the rotation. Thanks to some inspired defense by LA that held Malone to just 1 for 13 from the floor, the Lakers would hold a 13-point lead heading into the fourth quarter, and the baby Mamba would get his first taste of putting away a playoff opponent. Throughout the quarter, Kobe flashed the unguardable nature that would go on to define his career, drawing 12 free throws in the closing moments and helping to hold the lead even after Shaq fouled out with 7 minutes to play. It takes a certain type of player with a certain mentality to thrive come playoff time, and Kobe had proven that he was capable of embracing the moment. This performance would lead to an increased role for Kobe throughout the rest of the series, but after dropping another game at home to Utah in Game 4, it was Game 5 that would go on to be a defining moment in his career. Walking into an elimination game in front of the notoriously passionate Utah fan base, the Lakers had their work cut out for them, with top role player Byron Scott being out for the game with a wrist injury. Falling behind by 8 points at halftime, Kobe had been held scoreless in the first 9 minutes of action, and remained that way well into the third quarter. However, thanks to some aggressive defense, Los Angeles managed to trim the Jazz lead to 5 by the start of the fourth. Following his fourth quarter outburst in Game 3, Bryant had begun drawing the attention of Utah's best wing defenders, but once again he proved that he was up to facing the challenge of the big moment.
Right with him, the young rookie Shannon Anderson guarding the rookie Kobe Bryant. Bryant goes to the left corner, come back left to right, pull up on the angle left, jump and score, and counted. He's fouled by Shannon Anderson. What a move by Kobe Bryant. With it, out front to Kobe Bryant, make a three, drive, leap and lean off balance, shot good. Kobe Bryant, what a move. They put Kobe Bryant now right baseline, Kersey drive, reverse shot, it's good. What a shot. Inside a shot, underneath the load is Bryant, and he slams it in.
After dropping 9 points in the tight-fought quarter, and the Lakers seeing leading scorer Shaquille O'Neal foul out with only 1:46 remaining, LA had the ball with only 11 seconds left, and only one player on the floor wanted to take the final shot.
So Kobe Bryant, the young rookie, straight from high school, 8 seconds left. Bryant guarded by Russell. 5 seconds left. 4. Bryant drives, pull out, shot on the way, no good. Carmelo rebounds. We go to overtime.
After airballing the game-winning shot, Kobe would proceed to follow up with 3 more airballs during overtime, including 2 with less than a minute left. Utah would end up winning the game and clinching the series following the Lakers' loss. But what the Lakers gained was so much more valuable.
You know, I really thought that was a defining moment in his career. You know why? If somebody would have shot an air ball on our team, and they'd shot a second one, they were going to shoot a third one. He was fearless. I think that's one of the things that spurred him to greatness. He wasn't going to allow himself to fail. I don't know if anyone on our team would have taken 3 shots that he took. I don't know that. But I'll guarantee you one thing, when he came back next year, it was a different person than what the year before. That was not going to happen again.
Right, like you're worried about how people may perceive you, and like you're walking around and it's embarrassing because you shot 5 air balls. Get over yourself, right? And then after that, it's okay, well, why did those air balls happen? Got it. High school, year before, we played 35 games, max, right? Week in between, spaced out, plenty of time to rest. In the NBA, it's back to back to back to back to back to back to back. I didn't have the legs. So you look at the shot, every shot was online. Every shot was online, but every shot was short, right? I gotta get stronger. I gotta train differently. The weight training program that I'm doing, I gotta tailor it for an 82-game season so that when the playoffs come around, my legs are stronger and that ball gets there. So I look at it with rationale and say, okay, well, reason why I shot air balls is because my legs aren't there. I go, well, next year they'll be there.
Kobe Bryant's desire to step up in the big moment and willingness to keep shooting even after he had airballed what was at that point the biggest shot of his career is an element of what would go on to define his legacy. Being unafraid of the consequences of a moment and being willing to take failures, study them, and turn them into long-term success. Bryant's rookie season was filled with ups and downs, from career-defining highlights to frustrating failures. But what it did was establish a foundation that allowed him to learn from past mistakes and come back better than before. Kobe may not have been ready for the big moments just yet, but he wasn't afraid of them either. It was this mindset that would eventually establish him as one of the game's best, and soon, it would help him achieve his ultimate goal.
One man who gives the fans here quite a show is the Lakers' Kobe Bryant. Bryant follows the tradition of Lakers showmen. There was Elgin Baylor in the 60s and Magic Johnson in the 80s. Now Kobe's carried the torch into the 21st century and done it with a style all his own.
Welcome to the Kobe Show.
There goes Kobe. Watch this play. The explosion of Kobe Bryant. How did the kid do that? Bryant.
Kobe's giving the people what they came to see, that's for sure.
Entering the 1999 NBA season, Kobe Bryant had begun his rise towards being recognized as one of the league's premier players. In the year prior, he had more than doubled his points per game and time on the floor, carving out a larger role in the Lakers' rotation and forming one of the game's greatest 1-2 punches with the prime Shaquille O'Neal. Becoming a centerpiece on one of basketball's most legendary franchises had resulted in Bryant becoming an icon on and off the court, something that was made obvious when a fan vote had helped him secure his first All-Star appearance in 1998. From late-night talk show appearances to Adidas ad campaigns, Kobe was at the center of attention in the sports world thanks to his exciting highlight plays and memorable personality. This was a welcome sight for the NBA, who, following the retirement of Michael Jordan the previous year, had been desperately looking for a new era of players to help issue the league into the new millennium. On June 11, 1999, the Lakers announced that they had hired six-time NBA champion Phil Jackson to become the team's head coach. After helping lead the Chicago Bulls to a decade of dominance, Jackson had vowed to never coach again, leaving the game after the core of his former dynasty disbanded. However, seeing the potential on the Lakers roster, a group of talented players who had been unable to get over the hump in the postseason, Phil was lured out of retirement, and Los Angeles was able to secure the final missing piece towards becoming a dynasty of their own.
Man, you gotta see so much stuff. Just pivot work, like, without even having a basketball. It's just, run, set a pick, then spin, pivot, go, then stop, change the direction. Like, without a basketball. Like, practice layups without a basketball. It's weird. I learned the spirituality of the game, the mindfulness that comes with the game. Understanding how to put yourself aside, how to try to quiet your ego.
The new era of Lakers basketball would have to wait, as during one of the final preseason games against the Washington Wizards, Kobe Bryant would be hit by an opposing player's elbow, resulting in the young star breaking his hand. Not realizing the extent of the injury, Bryant had stayed in the game and actually played the remainder of the contest. But when the pain was too much to handle the next morning, an MRI revealed he had broken the fourth cappaparal bone in his shooting hand, an injury that would cause him to miss the first 6 weeks of the season. Despite losing half of their young duo, the Lakers still managed to get off to a hot start, going 11-4 in their first 15 games without Bryant. Since arriving in LA, Shaquille O'Neal had grown into the game's most dominant big man, using his strength and athleticism to terrorize defenses down low. Now in the heart of his prime, his resurgence in the league created a nightmare for opponents, especially in an era of basketball that thrived in the paint. Kobe would make his return to the Lakers on December 1st, before quickly re-establishing himself in the starting lineup. Playing a then career-high 38 minutes per game, Bryant had fully gained the trust of the Lakers coaching staff, and now was proving nightly why he belonged in the conversation of the league's top guards. There was evidence of his confidence growing every time he stepped on the floor, as any reservations or potential that people had seen in a young Kobe was now melting away to reveal a polished skill set that rivaled the game's greatest scorers. From elite footwork and above the rim highlights to an ability to hit difficult shots that left the opposition clueless, the young Mamba had finally broken out of his shell and was showing the basketball world exactly what he was capable of. This, combined with O'Neal's elite play and Jackson's improvements to the Lakers' game plan, resulted in them winning 67 games, tied for 5th most in NBA history. Shaq had put together what would be the greatest statistical season of his career, averaging 29.7 points, 13.6 rebounds, and 3 blocks per game on his way to being named the league MVP. Meanwhile, Kobe had taken his largest step towards NBA stardom, improving in every statistical category, including raising his points per game to 22.5 and leading the team in assists and steals. These improvements not only earned him his second All-Star appearance at the age of 21, but it also resulted in Bryant being named to the All-NBA second team, and becoming the youngest player in league history to earn all defensive honors. While the Lakers had clearly established themselves as the NBA's best team in the regular season, the playoffs had been a struggle for the franchise in recent years. Since Shaq and Kobe had arrived in LA, the Lakers had put together an underwhelming 14-16 record in the postseason, having their finals hopes ended by the eventual NBA champion San Antonio Spurs the year prior. Playing for a franchise as historically dominant as the Lakers, and being a player so obsessed with success that his work ethic had already begun becoming the stuff of legend, Kobe knew that his ultimate goal was winning the NBA Finals. It was the type of thing he had dreamed of growing up as a kid in Italy, and now with all the pieces coming together for a deep playoff run, the Lakers were finally the favorite to win it all, and 4 teams stood between them and the ultimate goal. Matching up in the first round with the entertaining but inexperienced Sacramento Kings, the Lakers set the tone for the series early, with Shaq continuing his dominant play in Game 1, scoring 46 points and grabbing 17 boards in a 10-point win. However, the Kings weren't willing to lay down, winning back-to-back games in Sacramento and pushing the Lakers to a winner-takes-all Game 5. Kobe had been hot throughout the series, scoring over 30 points in 3 straight games, and with the series returning to the Staples Center, LA was able to put together a 27-point win to close out the series. The second round provided a unique challenge for Los Angeles, with former All-Star and Shaq teammate Penny Hardaway leading a Phoenix Suns team that featured future Hall of Famer Jason Kidd and the talented Clifford Robinson. The Suns were fresh off upsetting the defending NBA champion Spurs in round 1, and now had their sights set on ending the title hopes of yet another top Western Conference team. Shaq and Kobe came out strong in Game 1, scoring a combined 62 points in a convincing win to take a 1-0 series lead. But the Suns would come out firing in Game 2, with Phoenix having a strong performance from a duo of their own, as Penny Hardaway and Robinson put together a 57-point outburst that had them in the lead with only 21 seconds remaining. Despite only having 13 points on 10 shots, Kobe ended up with the ball in his hands for the last possession, and the Staples Center was on its feet.
They're going to take it off the dribble. This is it now. Game's on the line. You're down 1. Kobe Bryant at the point on a 1-4 offensive formation. Kobe Bryant pulls up for the shot and hits the basket with 2.6 to go, giving the Lakers the lead. Kobe Bryant with 15 points made the biggest basket of the year for the Lakers.
Tell me a little bit about that shot.
Well, I just brought the ball up the court, and I looked up at the clock, and had enough time to kind of keep the floor spread and penetrate, get into the gap, see if I could create something. And fortunately, I hit the shot.
The biggest shot of Bryant's career at the time would be enough to swing the momentum in Los Angeles' favor, and after splitting games in Phoenix, the Lakers would close out the series with a 22-point win at home, securing them a spot in the Western Conference Finals. Waiting for Shaq and Kobe in the showdown of top teams in the West was a talented Portland Trailblazers team who had managed to put together a 59-win regular season. Led by six-time NBA champion and future Hall of Famer Scottie Pippen, who had been a large part of the dynasty Phil Jackson coached in Chicago, the Blazers also featured a pair of exciting young players in Rasheed Wallace and Damon Stoudemire, who had just begun to enter their primes. The group was fresh off eliminating the conference's traditional powerhouse, the Utah Jazz 4-1, and their combination of experience and skill would prove to be the Lakers' greatest challenge yet. While Game 1 was more of the same early success for the Lakers, with Shaq leading the way with 41 points in a 15-point win,
No stopping that.
Game 2 would be a much different story. In what would be their worst loss of the season to date, the Blazers would see Pippen, Rasheed Wallace, and Steve Smith all score over 20 apiece, on their way to a 29-point win in Los Angeles. Portland had just sent a wake-up call to the Lakers. This series was about to be a fight to the finish. The two teams would go back and forth over the next 4 games, with LA taking a 3-1 lead before dropping back-to-back games in Portland to force a Game 7. Kobe had struggled to find consistency early in the series, but after a confidence-boosting 33-point performance in Game 6, the young star was ready for the biggest game of his career so far. On June 4th, 2000, all eyes were on the Staples Center for what would be the second most watched conference finals game of all time, the type of stage where legends are born for the world to see. With a near impossible 3-1 series comeback on their minds, the Blazers had a clear game plan. Deny Shaq the ball in the post, and when he got the ball, throw as many defenders at him as possible. While it seems like a simple strategy, it worked to perfection, with O'Neal being held to only 9 points entering the fourth quarter. The Blazers had been able to build some steady production on offense, with young all-star Rasheed Wallace punishing LA on his way to a 30-point performance. The Lakers now found themselves down 15 with only 10:28 remaining in the fourth quarter, and it seemed another playoff elimination could be on the horizon. However, in true champion fashion, Los Angeles found a spark offensively when they needed it most, with reserve guard Brian Shaw hitting 2 clutch three-pointers to slow down Portland's double team. Bryant, who had been a well-rounded contributor throughout the game, raised his defense to a new level, playing a large role in the Blazers missing their next 12 consecutive shots, as LA climbed their way back into the fight. With the game tied and only a minute 50 remaining, Bryant would completely take over the game, drawing a foul that led to 2 free throws and then hitting a move on one of the greatest defenders of all time before pulling up for a tough mid-range jumper. The very next play, Kobe would go right back at Pippen, and this time, it would be one of the biggest plays of his career.
Portland has 3 timeouts left. The Lakers have 2. Bryant to Shaq.
Kobe's lob to Shaq would not only be the dagger that sealed their first trip to the NBA Finals together, but it also represented a key moment that would transcend this season and help form the chemistry that would lead to one of the NBA's next great dynasties. But for the time being, the focus would be on finally achieving their ultimate goal, and only one team remained in their way. Reggie Miller and the Indiana Pacers had always been a step or two away. Whether it was the Jordan-led Bulls, the New York Knicks, or even a young Shaq in Orlando, someone had always stepped between them and a chance at the NBA Finals. Except 2000 was different. After winning 56 games and finishing first in the Central Division, the Pacers had fought their way up the ranks in the Eastern playoffs, returning to their 5th Eastern Conference Finals in the past 7 years. Despite yet again being matched up with the Knicks, Indiana would finally break through the glass ceiling, with Reggie helping seal the final game of the series with a 34-point performance, and sending the Pacers to their first NBA Finals appearance in franchise history.
Just looking up, seeing the NBA Finals banners, and seeing NBA Finals on the floor, NBA Finals 2000 on your jerseys. It's a great feeling. It kind of feels like you're just dreaming, really.
With the stage set and two teams who had been fighting to get over the hump finally having the opportunity to win it all, the 2000 NBA Finals got off to a strong start for LA. Kobe had come out of the gates hot in his first championship action, scoring on 4 of his first 6 shots in the first quarter, but eventually found himself playing a more complementary role to Shaq, who had a clear advantage inside. O'Neal would be unstoppable in Game 1, scoring 43 points and grabbing 19 boards on the way to a 17-point victory for the Lakers. However, it was Bryant who would have the most valuable contribution to the game, thanks to his effort on the defensive end. Kobe would hold future Hall of Famer Reggie Miller to a career-low 1 for 16 performance, forcing the NBA's eventual all-time three-point leader to have one of the worst shooting performances in finals history. It was clear that the duo of Shaq and Kobe would be too much for Indiana in this series, and early in Game 2, Pacers guard Jalen Rose would try to take the fate of the series into his own hands.
Kobe Bryant. Looks like he sprained his ankle when Kobe came down. He's on the floor. And he's writhing in pain, holding his left ankle. Now Kobe came down as he shot that jumper. Now they're going to have to take the foul.
Rose had broken an unwritten rule in basketball. He had not only slid his foot into Kobe's landing zone, but years later, he actually admitted to doing it on purpose.
But playing against him in the finals again, I'm thinking this is before any questions were being asked. So like now you look back in hindsight, and I don't think it's cute. I don't think it's cool. I don't think I'm hard because I tried to hurt Kobe Bryant in a game. I'm disgusted by it because, I wanted to win that bad that I was willing to basically cheat to do it.
The Lakers would still go on to take Game 2, but the ankle injury would be one that bothered Kobe the rest of the series, and it would directly cause him to miss the entirety of Game 3 as well. In his absence, the Pacers were allowed to throw more pressure at Shaq, and the void left by Bryant on the defensive end led to Reggie Miller, who had been held to 28 points total in the first 2 games, to explode for 33 in a 9-point Pacers victory.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome tonight, the most important game of the finals.
The eyes of Indianapolis are on the ankle of Kobe Bryant.
The big question for Laker fans, will Kobe Bryant play tonight?
You need to be 95% to play, right?
Oh.
Okay, with 50%?
What do you need 80%? I can change my game.
Is there any circumstance that you can envision right now that would keep you from playing?
Any snipers in the room?
With Kobe back in the starting lineup for the next game, it was obvious that the winner of Game 4 would hold all the momentum of the series, making it a must-win for both teams. After only scoring 6 in the first half, Kobe would rise to the occasion with one of the most clutch performances in NBA Finals history, fighting through the pain of a still injured ankle to re-establish the momentum for the Lakers. Picking up his 5th foul early in the third quarter, Coach Jackson was worried that sitting Kobe would cause his ankle to tighten, so he trusted Bryant to keep playing, and it proved to be the right decision.
Bryant accelerating to the baseline and hitting the jumper.
That's an amazing gamble by Phil Jackson. Kobe's starting to get a little bounce in his step here. You can see starting to feel much better.
Kobe with a great feed to O'Neal. We played 2 minutes of the second half. Indiana by 5. Kobe Bryant cuts it to 3. AC Green looking for Bryant, but Jackson has pushed him far from the basket. Doesn't take him long to get into the lane and hangs in the air with another beauty.
Despite Kobe scoring 14 points in the second half, the Pacers were still able to tie the game at the end of regulation, meaning the winner would be decided in overtime. Shaq would try to take over in OT, but a sixth foul with only 2 minutes and 33 seconds remaining would take him out of the game completely. The rest of the night and the direction of the series would be completely in Kobe's hands.
Shaking on Miller and hitting a 2-point basket. If you want to be a hero, you've got to take hero shots.
Kobe is going to go to work again.
Here he is over Jackson. How good is this kid? Shaw running one-hander, followed in by Kobe Bryant.
Again, offensive rebounds.
The Lakers have a 3-1 lead.
Bryant's 8 points in overtime were the second most in NBA Finals history, firmly cementing Kobe as one of the game's top performers when the game matters most. Game 5 would be a slight step back for the Lakers, with Kobe having one of his worst shooting performances of his young career while still battling his ankle injury. The Pacers would pull away in the elimination game with a commanding 33-point win, the largest deficit the Lakers had faced all season, and they would stay alive for another game heading back to LA. Despite the hiccup in Indiana, the Lakers got themselves back on track for Game 6, determined to avoid another 7-game series. Shaq and Kobe would combine for 67 points, with Bryant overcoming continued shooting struggles to seal the game down the stretch with 5 clutch free throws. After a playoff run that had seen them push to their limits, Shaq and Kobe had finally led Los Angeles to their ultimate goal. The Lakers were NBA champions.
We worked so hard. It was a hard-fought game, and we finally got a championship, and it feels great.
Now, for your 21 years, you said you've always dreamed of winning a championship. Is it what you dreamed of?
Oh, it's everything and more. I mean, you have the Laker colors falling from the ceiling, the fans going crazy. I got the hat on and everything, covering my fro. It feels great.
No feeling quite like this, is it?
Woo, I love it. Can't wait to do it again.
The 2000 season had been a huge step for Kobe Bryant. He'd been able to successfully make the jump from great talent to great player, etching his name in history and finally reaching the goal of every competitor. He had performed on the game's biggest stage and proved that while he still had room to grow, he was going to be a force at the top of the league for years to come. In the meantime, together with Shaq, the Lakers had proven that they had officially arrived as the NBA's best, and a dynasty was born.
From the moment he burst on the scene with his prodigious talent, style, and charisma, comparisons to the NBA's greatest player were made. And after he and Shaquille O'Neal fought and scratched their way to a three-peat in Los Angeles, it seemed a matter of time before Kobe Bryant's name would be etched in history alongside that of his idol, Michael Jordan. But that road would not be without its trials and tribulations. 2 years ago, his world nearly came undone when he faced sexual assault allegations in a court of law. And like Jordan, Kobe's play would ultimately overcome all. The rift would send Shaq packing to Miami, conflicts with head coach Phil Jackson, and a sometimes acrimonious relationship with the media. So, how will Kobe be remembered? As the man who broke up the 3-time world champions? As a truly great Lakers scoring legend? Or as one of the players who eclipsed even the great Michael Jordan? These days, it seems anything's possible.
The Kobe Bryant we saw heading into the 2005-2006 season was far from the rising star we had witnessed winning his first NBA championship. This Kobe was a little more damaged both on and off the court. From very public feuds with former star teammate Shaquille O'Neal and coach Phil Jackson to a well-documented court trial that had changed many people's perception of his character. Bryant was left on a broken Lakers roster with no clear direction and with a career trajectory that seemed much less clear than before. The previous season, Kobe had taken a step back in his progression, still averaging 27 points, but shooting his lowest field goal percentage since 1998 and being named to the All-NBA third team, instead of the first team selection he had become accustomed to. The team itself had struggled in its first year without Shaq, translating to a losing record and the Lakers missing the playoffs for the first time in over a decade. Questions were raised about whether or not Kobe could be the main centerpiece of a contending team, and as the pressure mounted, it became clear in Bryant's mind that it was him against the world. Now, after mending his relationship with Phil Jackson, leading to the coach electing to return to Los Angeles, the upcoming season would not only be a crossroads for the Lakers as a franchise, but for Kobe's entire career.
You know, Jerry Rice told me, the great receiver, that he would, every time he stepped on the field, he would kind of tell himself he's not good enough, he has to prove. So the fear of failure was a way that he motivated himself. And I've heard you use that sometimes you feel like an underdog as well. Is that something that you have to kind of tell yourself so you push yourself even more?
Yeah, well, the thing that I'm afraid of is not winning another championship. That's the thing
That's a good fear,
that fears
right?
me. Yeah, I mean, that really drives me.
It was clear from opening night in 2005 that Bryant's mentality towards this season was different from anything that we had seen from him before. He was aggressive in his attack, relentlessly hunting for his shots and abusing opposing defenses despite clearly being their main focus. This led to a hot start as Kobe scored over 30 points in each of his first 4 games, setting the tone for his season early and getting the Lakers off to a 3-1 start. In recent years, he had developed and perfected one of the game's greatest offensive skill sets, with a full bag of go-to moves that ranged from smooth finishes around the rim to elite footwork that produced difficult pull-ups in the mid-range and beyond. It was clear that in order for Los Angeles to win games, Bryant would have to be more aggressive in his hunt for scoring opportunities than ever before, as other than the acquisition of talented forward Lamar Odom the previous year, the roster was depleted compared to previous seasons. While this formula would make for an up and down season, it was the perfect circumstance to produce one of the greatest scoring seasons the game has ever seen.
Well, I think the game itself is about competition. Right? So when you step out on that floor, the person that you're playing against, your opposition, must feel that way. And if they don't feel that way, I can smell it out pretty quickly. You know what I mean? But
and what do you do when you smell it out?
You go right at them. And you try to take their will away from them.
That's what you do, ain't it? You take people's will. Just tell the truth. That's what you do,
well,
Kobe.
When you play the game, when you're out there playing basketball, man, that's what you have to do. That's what you try to do.
Averaging 31 points through the first 24 games, the first legendary feat of the season would come on December 20th, 2005, where Bryant would accomplish something that nobody in the history of modern basketball had done before. In a 22-point win against the Mavericks, who would eventually go on to win 60 games on their way to the NBA Finals, Kobe would catch fire from the opening tip, knocking down difficult shots and attacking Dallas at every opportunity.
That's all the way up by Crispin. Kobe keeps it alive for a little later, and Kobe does it again. 16-11. How hot is Kobe? Typical one. And now Kobe hit on his way. This is it anyway. Even with the contact early. Inside he goes, gets contact, and looks for the three-point play. Very aggressive. He's trying to make a statement for his teammates. Kobe on the crossover. Got it again. He's got 46. Lakers lead by 19. Kobe doesn't have the numbers, but boy, he's trying to make his own statement. On the reverse, he does.
That's why I said.
Lakers by 21.
I said, watch this.
Big season for Kobe on the leader. Yes! A new career best 85. Kobe's at 58.
Dallas ought to foul somebody else and Kobe can't get it.
Now Kobe for three. I don't believe it. Incredible. 62 for Kobe.
I take it back. He is good, but he has more than Dallas has. They better get him a standing O right now because this is the last you'll see him tonight.
By the time the third quarter buzzer had sounded, Bryant had single-handedly outscored the entire Mavericks team, dropping a then career-high 62 points, and becoming the first player to accomplish the feat since the shot clock was introduced in 1954. The big performance against Dallas would be just a glimpse at what was to come, as the new year would also bring in a new level of play for the Lakers star. After scoring over 40 points in 6 of the first 10 games of 2006, his performances thus far into the season had established Bryant as the game's top scorer. But a seemingly meaningless Sunday night game against a struggling Raptors team on January 22nd would be the day Kobe Bryant would officially become a legend. The Toronto Raptors, who were still trying to find their identity as a franchise since the departure of star Vince Carter in the early 2000s, came into the game as a sub-500 team. They were led by an aging Jalen Rose, who was infamous for trying to injure Bryant in Game 2 of the 2000 Finals, and featured a budding star and future Hall of Famer Chris Bosh. But few people expected much from them as they entered an away game at the Staples Center. However, as had been the story at times throughout the season, the Lakers got off to a slow start, with the Raptors jumping out to an early 14-point lead despite Kobe scoring 26 points in the first half. Bryant had been a lone bright spot for Los Angeles, outscoring the rest of his teammates combined, but it was obvious that in order to avoid dropping an inexcusable game at home against an inferior opponent, he'd have to take his game to new heights.
We just wanted to win the game. And, in that type of situation, we were down by 18, 20 points. And we needed some energy. And as the leader of the ball club, I have to provide that spark.
Yo-yo in the dribble, then stops at the top of the key. Well, Kobe's got his stroke. Didn't have it the other night for most of the game.
Yeah. They're giving him the ball to see if he can add to it.
Yes, he does. That's what Toronto's shooting right now.
That tells you what the Lakers are doing defensively.
Kobe again. Still 6.5 to play in the third. He pulls up for a three. Yes. Kobe again. There's Kobe trying to move around Mo Pete, trying to put him up. Finally shoots. Counted in the foul. And you talked about him being in one of those zones. Yeah. He's definitely in it right now.
Yeah, I was just feeling emotionally. The feeling I had was I could run all day. The basket is pretty big. I didn't feel like I was in one of those zones where the basket just feels like a big bucket. The basket felt bigger. And I could see everything that was going on before it was happening.
Kobe with it now. Lakers lead 105-96. Another three. Well, there goes Wilt. 67 points, Kobe Bryant. 5. For three again. Yes!
Well, there's 70.
He's got it again. Kobe's hand. Kobe guarded by Mo Peterson. Kobe pump fake for two. Kobe's got the Laker record. 2 coming to get to 80 and 81. Bryant for 80. Kobe Bryant, 28 for 46 from the field. This would be 18 for 20 from the line and an 81-point game. 55 in the second half. Ladies and gentlemen, you have witnessed the second greatest scoring performance in NBA history. And Kobe will be replaced. And listen to this crowd for number 8, Kobe Bryant.
Kobe's 81 points is seen as the standard for elite offensive performances to this day, but it also capped one of the greatest scoring months in the history of professional basketball. Kobe had averaged 43.4 points per game in the month of January, the highest scoring output in a single month by any player not named Wilt Chamberlain, and had scored over 45 points in 4 straight games, joining Wilt and Lakers legend Elgin Baylor as the only players to ever accomplish the feat. Over the course of the rest of the season, Bryant would continue putting up elite numbers, all while leading the Lakers to a 45-37 record, clinching the 7th seed in the Western Conference, and accomplishing his goal of leading them back to the playoffs for the first time without Shaq. Kobe would win the NBA scoring title for the first time in his career, averaging 35 points per game and becoming only the 5th player in league history to average over 35 for an entire season. This accomplishment was enough to once again be named All-NBA First Team, and his efforts on defense earned him his 4th First Team All-Defensive honors. Despite controversially losing the MVP voting to Suns point guard Steve Nash, Bryant had more than re-established himself as one of the NBA's top stars. He had cemented himself as the game's most dominant player. The Lakers would go on to lose in the first round of the playoffs to the Phoenix Suns, but not before going up 3-1 on the number 2 seed and forcing them to fight back and take a 7-game series.
They'd love to get it into Nash's hands, and they do. Ball knocked away, stolen by Parker. Here comes George to Kobe Bryant. Bryant inside, it's good, it's good, tie game. Walton can tip it. Bryant with the save. Oh, you gotta get a shot here. Final seconds. Bryant for the win.
It was clear that Los Angeles needed to add more missing pieces to return to their previous place at the top of the Western Conference. But what the 2006 season accomplished for Kobe Bryant may have been more important than any single playoff series. When faced with a crossroads in his career, a point where he could have folded under the pressures both on and off the court, Bryant chose to dig down deeper, take the challenge head on, and mold his game into one of the most unstoppable offensive forces we've ever seen. From incredible performances to impossible shots, Kobe had proven time and time again throughout the season that he was ready and willing to take on whatever opposing teams threw at him, transforming his game into what the world would come to know as the Black Mamba. Now, as the season came to an end and his former teammate Shaquille O'Neal was left holding another NBA championship with his new team, the next step for Kobe and the Lakers was clear. It was time to go get another ring, by any means necessary.
We're a tough competition.
Some people sit there and say, y'all keep talking about Kobe being the greatest player in the game today. Y'all don't realize that Kobe trying to be arguably the greatest ever. Your response?
I gotta get a couple more rings.
Mm-hmm. Are you going to?
Yeah, you know what? I won't rest until we do.
The Lakers have notified the league Bryant will wear 24 next year.
Ball. Look who's got it. Double clutch reverse. Pop off, Kobe. Go ahead and pop it a little bit. At 95-92. Behind his back on a spin. Oh, and the slam. He'll go to the line. The crowd was on their feet.
One of our top stories, the Lakers adding some firepower, pulling off a blockbuster deal. Pau Gasol, Kobe Bryant's new teammate.
14 points, 4 boards. Gasol. That'll seal the deal.
Kobe Bryant, the recipient of the 2007-2008 NBA Most Valuable Player Award.
After a 22-year absence, the Boston Celtics are NBA champions once again.
Kobe, you won the MVP, you led the team to the finals. How do you characterize this season?
Well, I mean, the goal was to win a championship. It wasn't to win MVP or anything like that. It was to win a championship. So, from that aspect, we failed.
From the moment the Lakers entered training camp in 2008, there was one word that was unanimously on everyone's mind: revenge.
When we entered training camp this year, we were still very disappointed and almost angry from the way our season ended, last year. And you could feel it in the room. The bad taste was still there.
After what he would eventually call the greatest failure of his career, Kobe Bryant had the opportunity to represent the United States in the 2008 Olympics in Beijing, where he helped lead Team USA to the gold medal, once again proving that he was arguably the best player in the world. Now, as he headed back to Los Angeles to regroup ahead of the upcoming season, the expectation for success had been set, and nothing less would be accepted. Over the course of the past year, Kobe and talented big man Pau Gasol had formed one of the game's greatest 1-2 punches, with Bryant continuing his dominance on his way to his first career MVP. Standing at 7 feet tall, Gasol had been a bright spot on a struggling Grizzlies team, but the triangle offense in LA gave the talented big plenty of opportunities to showcase his skill. Finally having a consistent second scoring option for Bryant, the rest of the roster had fallen perfectly into place. Now well established with the team, Lamar Odom was the glue that held the offense together, and promising young players like Andrew Bynum and Trevor Ariza played important roles on both ends of the floor. Longtime teammate Derek Fisher was one of the most efficient point guards in the league, and had the NBA Finals experience needed to help Kobe steer the ship. Each member of the roster had played a key role in the Lakers reaching the NBA Finals the previous year, and now with the knowledge of what it takes to get to the game's biggest stage, Bryant was determined to lead them back to the top for redemption. And this time, he was going to do things his way.
He understood that without you and everybody else being on that mode, we were going to fall short. So he had to have everyone kind of buy into his mindset of obsession for winning and competing and challenging everyone. And that's what it took to be a champion.
Anxious to put the bitter loss in the NBA Finals behind them, Los Angeles got off to a strong start in 2008, winning their first 7 games on their way to tying the franchise record for most wins to start a season. By mid-December, the team had hit their stride, compiling a 21-3 record and putting the entire league on notice. Perhaps the most notable warning shot came on Christmas Day 2008, when the Lakers matched up with a red-hot Celtics team entering the game riding a 19-game winning streak. The Lakers' defense had been elite all season, and combined with a 27-point performance from Kobe, they were able to beat down Boston in the Staples Center on their way to a 9-point victory.
It's special, obviously, because there's so much hype around him playing Christmas Day. And, everybody talking about us being soft and so forth. So I think we've gotten better and, better defensive system. And I think we're just a better ball club.
While the Lakers would continue to rack up wins, with Kobe being named the Western Conference Player of the Month for December, a moment during a late January contest against the Memphis Grizzlies would test the mental strength of not only Kobe, but the rest of the team altogether.
Bynum is hurt. Oh no. Oh no. Andrew Bynum, you can hear him screaming in pain, and Kobe Bryant landed right into his knee.
After missing over 60 games the previous year due to injury, Andrew Bynum had been seen as the missing piece for the Lakers going into this season, and now facing the possibility of losing the young big for another unknown amount of time, it was easy to see the uncertainty in the eyes of the Lakers. Heading into a primetime game in Madison Square Garden, there was no better opportunity for a statement from the Black Mamba.
We think we got Andrew who's going to make a big difference for us. Now he goes down. We don't know how long he's going to be out for. The team was a little deflated. I was pissed off. You know what I mean? Because it's like, no, we're winning the championship. This should come hella high water. And my guys were down. Yeah. And going into New York, big game, I said, all right, I got to send a message to my guys and say, no, listen, we're doing this. Yeah. I understand it's hard. You went down, but we're getting it done. Yeah. So it's important to get into that mind frame of, no, nothing matters, and I don't want to talk to nobody. I don't want to see celebrities on the sideline. Don't dap me. Don't say hi to me. I don't care about none of y'all tonight.
Yeah, you just focus.
That was it.
Now the length of Wilson Chandler up against Kobe. And Kobe, what about right off the bench. Kobe over Chandler after the crossover. Inside the arc. I don't care. It's looked good, didn't it? By 5. He's got Kobe on the wing, and Kobe flying home. Two-hander by 27, 27 for 24 on a fall away. The floater.
That New York game, I knew D'Antoni's philosophies are never to double a guy that's high, because he always thinks they're going to cool off eventually, right? So I understood that. So once I got rolling, I knew that was going to be the case.
Kobe on a spin, what a pivot. Yes! 121-103, 59 for Kobe. What a display! Play at an incredible level. He's got it. Kobe Bryant has now scored more points than any other player at Madison Square Garden with 61.
By the end of the regular season, Kobe and the Lakers had put together the second best record in the NBA, finishing 65-17 and earning the #1 seed in the West. Bryant had continued his dominance, averaging 26.8 points per game and 5 assists, while once again securing spots on both the All-NBA First Team and First Team All-Defense. That being said, the time for the playoffs had finally arrived, and all individual honors took a back seat as Kobe and the rest of Los Angeles turned their attention to the season's main goal. After gaining the experience of winning the Western Conference playoffs the previous season, the Lakers entered the 2009 postseason with a clear understanding of what it takes to reach the finals.
For the Lakers, it's only one goal, and that's to win a championship. They've been waiting to start the postseason again, and they look like they are primed for a long, long run.
The first team standing in their way came in the form of the 8th-seeded Utah Jazz, who were led by a young core of future All-Stars and coached by the legendary Jerry Sloan. Los Angeles knew it couldn't take any opponent lightly and came out the gates aggressive, winning the first 2 games on their way to a 4-1 series victory and a ticket to the next round. While the Lakers had looked the part of title contenders in round 1, waiting for them in round 2 was the hungry Houston Rockets, who despite losing superstar Tracy McGrady earlier in the year, had still managed to win 53 games behind future Hall of Famer Yao Ming. The Rockets embodied the underdog role, with one of the league's best defenders in Ron Artest leading the charge in trying to take the Lakers out of their comfort zone. The strategy would work to perfection, as a gritty Houston team would shock the basketball world, beating Los Angeles on their home court and sending a wake-up call to the Lakers. Despite Kobe scoring 32 in Game 1, the Rockets had out-hustled LA behind Yao's 28-point and 10-rebound performance, making it clear that this series would be anything but easy. Game 2 had quickly become a must-win for the Lakers, and with Bryant being hungry as ever for the championship, he would lead his team as only he knew how.
Lakers have started 7-9. Battier watches Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant has started this game 4-5. Bryant tries on Shane Battier, who draws the foul as Kobe looks over at Doug Collins and said, "This guy cannot guard me."
Kobe would drop 40 points in a crucial Game 2 win, fighting through the Rockets' scrappy defense and proving that he was willing to go to any lengths to carry his team to the NBA Finals.
Right from the opening tip, we want to be aggressive, get after it a little bit. We're being tested, so, this is when it's the most fun, to be honest with you.
The Rockets and Lakers would split the next 2 games in Houston, with Houston picking up a huge victory in Game 4, putting together an all-around team effort as star big man Yao Ming had gone down with a fracture in his right foot. Los Angeles would respond with a massive 40-point win on their home court, and an opportunity was presented to close the series out in 6 games. But once again, they found themselves struggling to find ways to put away the Rockets, as the very next game, Houston would scratch and claw its way to force a Game 7. With their backs against the wall to an unexpected opponent, Los Angeles would respond to the challenge, putting together one of their best efforts in the series behind the suffocating defense that they had prided themselves on all season long. The Lakers ended the night with a 19-point win and a well-earned ticket to the Western Conference Finals.
It's a good experience to face an elimination game, to face the seesaw battle of a playoff series, going up, going down. I think it helps a team come together.
After the grueling 7-game series with Houston, Bryant and the Lakers understood the importance of taking care of business in the conference finals, especially if they wanted some much-needed rest heading into the championship series. Matching up with LA at the top of the West was a strong Denver Nuggets team, who behind young star Carmelo Anthony and former Finals MVP Chauncey Billups had clinched the number 2 seed and were making a case as legitimate contenders. Kobe and the Lakers would start the series off strong, with Bryant dropping 40 points and Gasol dominating the paint on the way to a 2-point victory. However, Game 2 would be another fight to the finish, with each team's star going at each other as Carmelo and Kobe combined for 66 points in a showdown at the Staples Center.
It's J.R. Smith who sparks him off the bench as Carmelo Anthony gets another and continues his hot hand. Bryant drives inside the finish. Anthony gets inside, blocked from behind by Odom. That time he's fouled and he puts it in. And that's what we've been seeing from Anthony. Anthony on Bryant. Bryant for 3. Tie game!
Neither team's defense could gain control, and as the dust settled, the Nuggets were able to pull out a hard-fought 106-103 victory, with the series headed to Denver. Despite splitting the next 2 games to tie the series up at 2 games apiece, the Lakers had a certain amount of composure, with every guy in the locker room knowing they had to avoid a repeat of the Rockets series. With a chance at redemption in the finals on their minds, Los Angeles would win back-to-back games to close out the Nuggets, including a 35-point dagger performance by Kobe Bryant to send his Lakers back to the game's greatest stage.
This is where it becomes the greatest challenge for us.
Fellas, let somebody handle your tickets, let somebody take your phone calls, tell them leave you alone for another 2 weeks.
Focus now, we gotta focus. 1, 2, 3, break.
Waiting for the Lakers at the summit of the postseason was an unexpected but still dangerous opponent. The number 3 seed Orlando Magic had survived a gauntlet in the Eastern Conference, knocking off the defending champion Celtics in an intense 7-game series, and then taking out the 66-win top-seeded Cavaliers in 6 games. The Magic were led by a young star big man in Dwight Howard, who had put up over 20 points, 14 rebounds, and 3 blocks per game during the regular season. And they had a pair of talented forwards in Hedo Turkoglu and Rashard Lewis, who made up a well-balanced scoring attack. Los Angeles entered the series as the favorites, with few people expecting Orlando to be able to compete with their experience. But after narrowly avoiding an upset earlier in the playoffs, the Lakers knew not to take any opponent lightly. As Game 1 was underway at the Staples Center, it was clear the Lakers had done their homework, swarming Dwight Howard at every opportunity in an effort to slow him down. From there, Los Angeles played the elite defense they had been known for all season, holding all Magic players below 13 points and forcing their 3 main scorers to all shoot below 27% from the field. On the other end, Kobe had risen to the challenge once again, determined to make his mark on the series from the opening tip and fueled with the desire to win another ring after a 7-year drought.
Deflected by Nelson. Bryant gets it right back. Falling away, tough shot, puts it in. Oh, what a shot from Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant hit, count it, and 1. Shot clock winding down. Kobe Bryant on the drive, gets to the basket. Oh, what a move from Kobe Bryant as the shot clock expires. Couple of fakes. Shot clock at 2, he's got to put it up. Tries to bank it, does so, and a foul. Kobe Bryant, brilliant here in the 3rd quarter, and the Lakers up by 22.
Bryant would continue to hunt for his spots and stay aggressive throughout the entire contest, scoring 18 points in the 3rd quarter alone on his way to a 40-point and 8-assist performance. The Lakers would come out on top, pulling off a 25-point victory to take Game 1 and sending a message to the Magic.
I just want it so bad. I just want it really bad. So, it's just, you just put everything you have into the game, and then your emotions kind of flow out of me.
Anxious to put Game 1 behind them, the Magic came out strong in Game 2, with the talented forward Rashard Lewis making his presence known early. With so much attention being paid to Howard, Lewis had been able to get some good looks early on, and he heated up quickly on his way to 18 points in the second quarter alone.
You know, Lewis is the fire right now. He won 2 in a row, 3 in a row. Right, got offensive rebound, little Jay in corner 3, right? So we got to put out that fire.
The Lakers had remained aggressive, using their defense to spark momentum as they had all postseason long. And as the two teams battled down the stretch, it was the Magic who had the ball with a chance to win at the end of regulation.
Turkoglu again will trigger. Odom jumping up high to obscure his view. A lot to the basket for Levy. Party laid it up, no good! And we'll go to overtime.
Having been given a gift courtesy of the blown play, the Lakers would never look back in overtime, as the duo of Kobe Bryant and Pau Gasol would prove just why they had become known as one of the game's elite tandems.
Bryant, jab step, drive, puts it up, shot's good. Top shot, the Lakers back up by 1. Puts LA at the free throw line. Bryant looks inside, finds Gasol, counting, and a foul.
Together, the two would combine for 53 points, burying the Magic's hopes for a Game 2 upset and walking away with a well-earned 5-point overtime victory.
Still waiting for a big smile out of you. You're up 2-0. What's the story? Are you not happy, or you're only half happy, or?
Still to be happy about.
You're up 2-0.
Job's not finished. Job finished? No, I don't think so.
With the series going back to Orlando, the Magic knew it was now or never to make a statement in the series. The Amway Center hadn't seen an NBA Finals matchup since Shaq and Penny ran the show in 1995, and the city was buzzing with excitement. Kobe Bryant, however, had other plans, as he would start the game scorching hot, dropping 17 points in the first quarter to pull the Lakers out to a 4-point lead heading into the second. The Magic would respond with a run of their own, as Turkoglu and Lewis poured in shots from the perimeter, and the Orlando crowd witnessed their team put together their most impressive performance of the series, with 5 guys scoring at least 18 points. The offensive onslaught would be too much for Los Angeles, with the Magic on their way to a crucial 4-point win in Game 3.
It's a tough team. It's not a cupcake team. It's a tough loss for us. And, we feel like we can play much, much better. So tomorrow, you just make your adjustments and get ready to go.
Aware of the dangers that come with giving an underdog opponent hope, Kobe and the Lakers had no intentions of letting this series get out of hand. And from the moment Game 4 got underway, it was clear that Bryant wasn't interested in seeing the series go on any longer.
With the midway point of the first, Bryant to the basket, drive, shot's good, and a foul. Good move by Bryant. Bryant leans in, puts it up, puts it in, top shot.
The Magic refused to go down easy, and it took a big shot by the veteran Derek Fisher to send the game to overtime. But by the time the final buzzer sounded, the Mamba had scored 32 points and collected 8 assists in an 8-point win. Now with the championship in reach and Orlando down 3-1, there was no question what was coming next.
One thing. Real quick. In 2000, we won the championship against Indiana. And in Game 5, we assumed that Indiana was going to lay down. And we went in there and got kicked royally by 30 points. That's true. So Sunday, when we show up here, the same determination, fight, grit, belief, confidence, we got to show up with that again on Sunday. They're not going to quit. You don't get this far and quit. So let's enjoy this. But, hey, Sunday, man.
One more.
On a mission that had spanned the course of almost a decade, looking to achieve his first championship in the post-Shaq era, Kobe Bryant entered Game 5 as focused as he had ever been in his career. He had made strides as a leader this season, learning from past mistakes and committing himself to guiding this team to championship glory. As he had done all series long, the game's greatest closer came out of the gates attacking, scoring 11 points in the first quarter with the intent of crushing the Magic's spirits early. Everyone in the Amway Center crowd witnessed one of the game's all-time greats rise to the occasion in the game that mattered most.
Kobe Bryant and the finish. This is Mozart in sneakers for Kobe Bryant.
Bryant looking double team, gets it to go. Pop shot field. Bryant knocks it down. But they're at their best. He's making plays. Wow! And speaking of making plays, Bryant banks it in. Mama, there goes that man.
Behind his example, the rest of the Lakers followed suit, with Trevor Ariza continuing his elite defensive play and Lamar Odom knocking down big shots off the bench to keep the Lakers in front. As the seconds began to tick down, the Lakers' execution on both ends would prove to be too much for Orlando, and after a long journey of ups and downs, it was time for the purple and gold to celebrate.
The Lakers are NBA champions once again. LA wins the 2009 NBA title.
Such a long journey, so many ups and downs, and so many sacrifices for my family and me working hard.
After the crushing defeat in the finals the previous season, Kobe Bryant had finally proven to the world that he could lead the Lakers to an NBA championship. Over the course of the series, Bryant had averaged 32.4 points, 7 assists, 1.4 steals, and 1.4 blocks per game, a stat line that earned him his first career Finals MVP and made him the first player since Michael Jordan to average 30 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists on the winning team in the finals. Fueled by years of public ridicule, on-court team struggles, and questions about if he could do it, Kobe had once and for all shown the world that he was capable of anything he put his mind to.
It's rare in a career when you get to the top of the mountain and then you gotta start over again. And then you get back up to the top of the mountain again. You just don't see that too often. And I feel very fortunate and very blessed to be in this situation, and just proud.
While winning his 4th ring, the first without Shaq, was a career-defining moment, it was obvious that Bryant still wasn't satisfied with easing up his hunt for rings. After all, his idol and eventual mentor Michael Jordan had been able to win 6 during the Bulls' historic run in the 90s, and former teammate O'Neal had already been able to win his 4th a few years previously in Miami. Kobe knew that in order to be on the level of the all-time greats, another ring was needed to properly fill out his resume. With Phil Jackson reprising his role as head coach and the core pieces of the roster remaining intact going into the 2009-2010 season, the Lakers had already been seen as the favorites. But the addition of a familiar face who had given Los Angeles trouble in the 2009 playoffs would be a key ingredient to another title run.
Ron Artest, who's actually a year younger than Kobe Bryant, joining the Lake Show. 2 years ago, he told Kobe Bryant that he wanted to help him win a championship, and now that day has finally arrived.
How this was going to happen, so it wasn't like a surprise type thing. I was, like I said, I wanted to be a teammate of his and be a part of the Lakers for a long time.
Adding a proven scorer and elite defender in Ron Artest rounded out an already championship caliber lineup in LA. And as the season got underway, it was clear that Kobe and the Lake Show were once again on a mission.
You know, the end result is repeating, but it's a whole nother year. We did last year was great. It's not that difficult to me. Just forget about it, move on to the next season, win it again.
After receiving the symbol of their hard work from the previous season on opening night, the Lakers would win 18 of their first 21 games to start the regular season, looking invincible as the chemistry forged in the postseason rolled over into the new year. Kobe Bryant continued his reign as the game's most talented scorer, putting up 30 over 9 times during that stretch, and growing his legend as one of the game's greatest closers with a collection of game-winning shots that single-handedly propelled the Lakers to victory.
Chest looking, gets it to Bryant. Bryant dribbling, has to put it up at the buzzer. Banks it in! He banks in the three!
Amazing! Kobe has just won it for the Lakers!
It was such a Kobe moment. I actually couldn't be that mad because I looked down and said, it's Kobe. He's either laugh or cry. I don't know what's funny to do or laugh. Hey, man, that's the only person I'm like, look, anybody else, I'll tore that locker room up.
The Lakers for the win. Kobe going up over Bell, ball away. Yes! Yes! At the buzzer, he does it! Was there ever a doubt? Kobe wins it for the Lakers! They do. It's all just behind Kobe. Kobe will get it for the win.
He is hard to believe!
Even after the hot start, the middle of the season brought some adversity, as some offensive struggles had added more pressure on Bryant to rise to the occasion, something he never shied away from. But it didn't take long to see that his body was struggling to carry the load that his mind was willing to.
Kobe came up gimpy on that play.
There's a variety of things that went on with him in the course of the year.
Kobe plays hurt, injured, tweaked ankles, dislocated fingers, bad wrist, back spasms, night in and night out.
His finger, he had a hip situation, hurts knee. He finally had to submit to the fact that I'm doing a disservice to myself, and now I'm going to have to sit back here a little bit and recuperate.
While Kobe was forced to step away from the game for 3 weeks to get healthy prior to the playoffs, the rest of the Lakers stepped up to fill his responsibilities on the court, as an increase in team chemistry led to 4 straight wins in his absence, and as he returned, the roster once again made strides down the home stretch. Los Angeles would end up finishing with a Western Conference best 57 wins, clinching the #1 seed for the 3rd straight season. Kobe Bryant had been deadly as ever, averaging 27 points and 5 assists on 46% shooting per game, and becoming the youngest player to ever score 25,000 points at the age of 31. Once again taking his spot on the first team All-NBA and All-Defense, the stars had once again aligned for Bryant to lead the Lakers into the playoffs, and the quest for the elusive repeat championship was on. Despite once again being the West's top seed, there were still people who doubted the Lakers' ability for a back-to-back, especially after a few bad losses at the end of the regular season had left them looking vulnerable. Regardless, the postseason was a new opportunity to silence critics, and the first team that stood in their way was an uncharacteristically talented 8 seed in Oklahoma City. The Thunder featured the youngest scoring champion in NBA history, as a 21-year-old Kevin Durant had taken the league by storm in only his 3rd season. However, just as the Lakers had hoped, the investment of Ron Artest in the summer would pay off early in the series, as the highly touted on-ball defender would make life difficult for Durant, holding him to just 29% shooting in Game 1. Behind a big double-double performance by Pau Gasol, the Lakers would secure an 8-point win at the Staples Center, then battled hard in Game 2 in a close contest that saw Bryant drop 39 points to give LA a 2-0 series lead. Still, the young Thunder refused to go down easy, storming back in OKC with back-to-back wins of their own over the Lakers, something that Los Angeles hadn't experienced since the 2008 finals.
Where's the mind frame for this team?
I'm not sure. But we understand this is a tough test. I mean, said at the beginning of the series it wasn't going to be easy. It's going to be a long series. It's going to be a dogfight.
Kobe and the Lakers had to take care of business at home if they wanted to avoid a 7-game series in round 1. And after picking up a gritty 24-point victory behind a big performance from Pau Gasol, it would be LA with the chance to send the Thunder packing in Game 6. Kobe Bryant would be locked in entering the contest, determined to keep the Thunder from extending the series. After a 16-point outburst in the third quarter by Bryant to halt OKC's momentum, it was Pau Gasol who would make the biggest play of the game. The Utah Jazz had high hopes for their third chance in a row at facing the Lakers in the postseason, but quickly found themselves suffering a familiar fate, as despite their best efforts, they couldn't prevent Los Angeles from pulling off a 4-game sweep. Bryant had been relentless, preventing any momentum from Utah by answering their runs with timely buckets and demoralizing performances. After a poor playoff performance against the Jazz as a rookie that had been a driving factor in Bryant's development into one of the game's top stars, there was something poetic about his play throughout the series. Kobe would score over 30 in all 4 games, including a combined 65-point outburst with Pau Gasol in Game 4. And now, with extra time to rest before the Western Conference Finals, the Lakers were once again hitting their stride at the right time. After defeating one of his former rivals, it was only fitting that waiting for Kobe and the Lakers in the conference finals would be another team that had previously been an obstacle for LA. Led by 2-time MVP Steve Nash and All-Star Amari Stoudemire, the Suns had revamped their roster under new head coach Alvin Gentry, winning 54 games and coming off a sweep of their own against the Spurs. It seemed like the series was all but decided early on, with Kobe dropping 40 points on 56% shooting in a 21-point Game 1 win for LA, and then the Lakers pulling out a 12-point victory in Game 2 behind a 29-point performance by Pau Gasol to make the series 2-0. However, as Kobe knew all too well, the Suns were a resilient team, and with the series headed back to Phoenix, they would gain momentum on their home court, coming up with 2 wins of their own. The first was thanks to a 42-point and 11-rebound masterclass by Amari Stoudemire, and the second came from a hot shooting performance from their bench that would hold off a 38-point effort by Bryant in Game 4. With Game 5 being a must-win for LA, they would respond how they had all season, with Kobe continuing his elite play, leading the charge for the Lakers.
Game number 4, here's Kobe Bryant. What a run he has had. Bryant. He had to extend to get it off. Order here, the bench. They have not gotten into any rhythm, and Kobe gets that sweet spot that he likes against the zone. Ball before it starts this period. Bryant with a long 3. And Phoenix hopes they can get that home court and go home for Game 6. And Kobe says, we'll have no part of that as he puts his team back up 6 again.
Similar to Game 6 against the Thunder, this contest would come down to the final possession. And once again, it was another member of the Lakers who was willing to step up when they were most needed. With all the momentum in the series following Ron Artest's clutch play to win Game 5, the Lakers would close the series out with a convincing 8-point win in Game 6, with Bryant sealing the Suns' fate with yet another big performance, scoring 37 to send Phoenix home and bring his average for the series to a playoff best 33.7 points per game. After another long playoff run, Kobe and the Lakers had once again reached the NBA Finals, but this time it would be against an opponent they knew all too well. Putting together what many had called an unprecedented roster at the time in 2007, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Ray Allen had re-established the Boston Celtics as one of the league's top franchises. With a well-rounded roster that played well on both ends of the floor, Boston had taken the league by storm in its first season together, capturing the 2008 NBA championship over the Lakers in an intense 7-game series.
Right now, anything's possible. Anything's possible!
Now, after narrowly missing the opportunity for a rematch in the 2009 finals, the Celtics were back on top of the East and hungry for another ring. On the opposite side, from the moment the final buzzer sounded in 2008, Kobe and the Lakers had been hungry for a chance at revenge in a series they felt should have been theirs. Something that still stuck with them even after winning a title of their own the previous year. 2 years later, and with each team having split the previous 2 championships, the 2010 finals would be an ultimate showdown between the league's 2 most historic franchises, and it would be one of the most anticipated matchups in NBA history.
We're going right now, right at tip-off, we're going. This is our turn, let's go. Go! What time is it? Game time!
It was clear from the opening tip in Game 1 that this was not the same Lakers team from 2008, as they showcased a newfound toughness and grit that had been lacking in their first matchup with Boston. Behind strong efforts by Pau Gasol on both ends and a strong group effort to stifle the Celtics' offense, the Lakers handled business on their home court. Kobe would finish the game with 30 points, 18 of which came in the second half, to secure a 13-point win for Los Angeles.
We got to put our souls in this game. You know what you're supposed to do, but we got to go do it.
With only 3 teams ever coming back from an 0-2 deficit in the finals, the Celtics knew they had to come out strong in Game 2, and a big performance from one of their big 3 would give them just the boost they needed.
Really trying to get back as Allen fires a 3, knocks it down. Ray Allen has the highest three-point percentage in NBA Finals history. He's had an 18-rebound game in these playoffs. Back for Allen, a 3. It's good. Ray Allen from downtown. Ray Allen backs out, a 3. Knocks it down again. Ray Allen from downtown. He's 4 for 4.
Behind the start to one of the greatest shooting performances in NBA Finals history, longtime rival of Kobe Bryant, Ray Allen would knock down 7 threes in 8 attempts in the first half, finding ways to get free of the Lakers' defense and showing exactly why he was the NBA's all-time leader in three-pointers made. The third quarter saw Los Angeles fight back, with a balanced attack courtesy of the triangle offense, and as the game entered the fourth, both teams were locked in a standstill. This wouldn't last long though, with another Celtics stepping up in crunch time, as Rajon Rondo's 10 points in the final quarter would spark Boston's offense and secure a 103-94 Boston win in the Staples Center. Allen would end the game with 32 points, including the record for most threes ever in a finals game at the time. And just like that, the series was tied up heading across the country to Boston.
I love being the enemy and haters, especially when you win. Nothing like it.
This could be the last time we play here. Better not be the last time we play here. And it could be. You don't change your ways.
Kobe Bryant had struggled in Game 2. Scoring only 21 points on 20 shots and being unable to get a rhythm going as the Celtics defense smothered him on every possession. Now with a pivotal Game 3 on the line, he would be on a mission to establish himself in the series once again. Standing in his way was future Hall of Famer Kevin Garnett, who after struggling in the first 2 games of the series would find his offensive touch early on, going right at the Lakers and playing with the emotion that had defined his career. In the back and forth contest, Kobe would lead the charge for LA, rising to the occasion by scoring 29 points and contributing in big moments as the series once again came to a close fourth quarter.
But you see the defense by Fisher. He's not giving them any airspace, making those shots a little tougher. Kobe Bryant and a foul. Bryant gets away from Rondo. Oh, what a pretty move. Left-handed floats it in. Bryant takes it away from Garnett.
everybody here, they would have told us before the game even started, we're going to fast forward to the beginning of the fourth quarter, and you're going to be up 6 in the NBA Finals to win the title. Will we take it? Yes, sir. Will we take it? Yes, sir. Let's go.
In crunch time, it would be 35-year-old Derek Fisher, who had built a reputation for clutch performances that would put together an 11-point outburst to push the Lakers ahead in a 91-84 win. Just one game after giving up home court advantage, LA had taken it right back, securing a 2-1 lead. Once again feeling the pressure, Boston knew that Game 4 was another opportunity to swing the momentum of the series, and once again they would respond the way champions do. Behind a strong overall team performance, led by longtime Celtic Paul Pierce, Boston would pound the ball in the paint, attacking the rim and forcing the Lakers to stop them inside. The strategy would work early on, but once again, LA would make a mid-game run that kept things close entering the final minutes.
Bryant hits a three. Kobe Bryant answers right back. Allen is on Kobe Bryant. Tough shot. Gets it to go. He wants the ball. Brown's got a little quiet. Kobe Bryant drills the three-pointer.
This time, however, it would be Boston who would make a clutch run, as they outscored the Lakers by 10 points in the fourth quarter on their way to a 7-point victory. Kobe had been relentless in the final quarter, getting to the free throw line at will and contributing 12 points in the fourth alone. But an unexpected bench performance from Glenn Davis and Nate Robinson would be the game's deciding factor. Feeling all the momentum now after watching their bench put away the Lakers in Game 4, the Celtics were anxious to make a statement in front of their home crowd for Game 5. Behind 15 first-half points on his way to his best performance of the series, Paul Pierce would help propel the Celtics to a 7-point lead going into halftime. But Boston was met with an aggressive Kobe Bryant, who was doing everything he could to provide an offensive spark for his team.
There, Kobe Bryant. Oh, what a tough shot. Perkins, good help defense there. Bryant again. Bryant, one dribble. Again from three-point range. Kobe Bryant, 10 points in less than 4 minutes here in the third quarter.
Despite scoring 19 points in the third quarter and finishing the game with a total of 38, Bryant and the Lakers were unable to contain Boston's Big Three, who combined for 32 of their team's points on their way to a pivotal Game 5 win. Los Angeles now had their backs against the wall for the first time this season, facing a 3-2 series deficit and needing to win 2 games in a row against one of the league's most dominant teams in order to keep their championship hopes alive.
The challenge obviously is down 3-2. We had a couple opportunities to slip away, but it is what it is. Like, you go home, you have 2 games at home that you need to win. Pull your boots up, get the work.
Behind their experienced and unrattled head coach Phil Jackson, the Lakers enter Game 6 knowing that in order to win the series, they'd have to put the last 2 games behind them.
All you have to do is win 2 home games and you're the champion. If you can't do that, you're not the champion. The Lakers, it's in their hand.
With the Staples Center buzzing and home court advantage in full effect, the Lakers would come out swinging while facing elimination, immediately getting after the Celtics at every opportunity. This fire spread to every Laker on the floor, from Kobe, Gasol, and Artest, all the way to guys on the bench playing big minutes. Every player on the roster knew that this would not be their final game. Together, they would hold Boston to only 67 points, their lowest total of the playoffs, and Kobe would provide the knockout punch thanks to a 26-point, 11-rebound, and 4-steal performance that sealed a 22-point victory for LA. The Lakers had responded to the adversity and came up big when it mattered most, forcing what was sure to be one of the most iconic Game 7s in NBA history.
For us, it's really just doing what we do. I mean, you can't really enjoy the moment when you're in it. In terms of what's happening. I mean, you just got a job to do. You go out there and you do it, and then
And you can look back on it after the fact, but during, you just gotta go out there and do your job.
On June 17th, 2010, the Lakers and Celtics would face off in the most watched NBA Finals game since Michael Jordan's final game as the Bulls beat the Jazz in 1998. The build-up to the game was a fan's dream, the NBA's two most iconic franchises in a winner-takes-all matchup for the championship. For Kobe Bryant, this matchup meant a final chance at redemption for the loss 2 years prior, and presented yet another chance to etch his name in history books. As the game got underway, it was the Celtics who would strike first, hungry to make sure they didn't let their chance at another title slip away. Rondo would be a key factor early on, finding his teammates and helping Boston jump out to an early 9-point lead. Kobe had struggled to find his footing early on, but it was the contribution of Ron Artest in the second quarter, both offensively and defensively, that would allow the Lakers to go on a run of their own.
Artest with the steal. Drives down, lays it in.
The two teams would go back and forth for the rest of the half, with Boston up 6 as the dust settled and the two teams headed to their locker rooms. As the second half began, it was now the Lakers who would come out as the aggressors, scratching and clawing their way towards only being down 4 points heading to the fourth. The entire series and season would come down to this final 12 minutes. Having added Ron Artest in the offseason to help defend their championship crown, the Lakers would once again see their decision pay off, as Artest would continue his inspired play on both ends and fuel the Lakers during an intense crunch time run that would see them take the lead. Kobe remained aggressive, drawing fouls as the Celtics scrambled to contain him, and knocking down big free throws to keep the Lakers ahead. Boston refused to go down easy, with Rasheed Wallace knocking down a big triple to cut the lead to 3 with only a minute left. But this time, it was Kobe's trust in another Laker that would be the deciding moment of the game.
Bryant looking. Artest, that's a 3. Bang! Lakers by 6 with a minute to play. Down to Soul, kicks it out to Odom. Odom throws it ahead. The Lakers repeat back-to-back titles. The LA Lakers, the 2010 NBA champions.
It was a heck of a series, man. When we split and lost the second one here, going up to Boston, that was the most fun I think we've had, because our backs were against the wall and it was tough going into the Garden and winning, and then going down 3-2 and then having to bounce back and win. This is the sweetest one.
During the series, Bryant had averaged 28.6 points and 2 steals per game, overcoming Boston's increased defensive pressure and now being named NBA Finals MVP for the second consecutive year. The first player to earn the honor in back-to-back years, since his former teammate Shaquille O'Neal did it during the Lakers' three-peat. In a way, this may have been as symbolic as any other aspect of Kobe's second championship run. Not only was he able to prove that he was capable of winning more rings without Shaq, but he did so in his own way, with a team that was designed to play around him and with his mentality. Few of the all-time greats have been fortunate enough to win multiple rings back-to-back in different eras. But the way Kobe was able to do it, with 2 completely different rosters and with 2 very different play styles, just speaks to his ability to adapt and constantly grow as a player. In the end, this will always be what made him special. And now, he had 5 rings and a lot of silenced critics to show for it.
The challenge was issued. Right, wrong, or indifferent. People saying, well, Kobe can't win without Shaq. I said, okay, you know what? I'll show you. I'll show you. And so from that point, it became personal for me. I knew that, winning the championship meant more to me than it did to everybody else. I treat this as life and death, and come hell or high water, that's what I was going to get done.
I've always said that I wanted to be remembered as a player that didn't waste a moment, didn't waste a day. And I felt extremely blessed by the God-given talent. But at the same time, I didn't take it for granted at all. And so if I could be remembered as a person that was born with a lot of talent, but did everything he could to try to overachieve, that lived every day as if he was the 12th guy on the bench. I think that's a very powerful message to have, and something that hopefully the players that are now and players that will come later choose to embody as well.